Hi, I'm David Houston. I am the director of the Ohr-O'Keefe Museum in Biloxi, Mississippi.
This museum is amazing the way it is set up. All this open air and beautiful southern look with the trees with the Spanish moss and the different shapes and the old buildings. Tell us more.
This is Frank Gerry's only museum in the Southeast. This building in Frank Gerry's output is also unique because rather than being a singular building, it's a campus. And he conceived of this as kind of a village. You have a series of buildings, a lot of them based on vernacular forms. We have a shoe fly, which is an old Southern tradition of building the kitchen away from the house so that it doesn't burn. And that means that there's an open space and the dogs would traditionally run through them. So architecturally it's called the dog trot. We have a really large porch up top, and it's based on the concept of a shoe fly. And the shoe fly, at least in theory, is that if you build high enough, you're above the bugs in the summer and they won't bother you, so you don't need to screen it in. These pods around us here are influenced by the torqued work of George Ohr. What we like to say is that the Ohr-O'Keefe Museum is one destination with two masters. Frank Gerry's built the containers and they contain the extravagant work of George Ohr. So what you have are two people that are at the top of their fields, and they take something solid and they make it fluid. It suggests movement even though it's static, and the dynamic quality of both of their works are very complementary. In fact, Frank told me the first time he saw a George Ohr pot, I felt like I met a kindred spirit. It is an amazing story. Ohr, largely uneducated, largely self-taught, after apprenticing himself to the potters at Newcomb College in New Orleans, particularly Meyer, he established the pottery here in Biloxi on the west side of town. He comes back and he starts making everyday objects, and in the mid-1890s, there's a fire and the pottery burns to the ground. As a person of fortitude and resilience, plus what else did he have going, he rebuilt his pottery here in downtown Biloxi, and he continued making pottery there until around 1910. And at that time, he stopped and spent the rest of his life kind of tooling around town on a motorcycle with goggles on and his mustache flapping in the wind.
These strange-looking buildings are the Pod Gallery.
Door that's very dramatic. It's painted a dark charcoal gray, and in it is featured the bisqueware that has the oldest piece of his that we have from roughly 1890, 1892, and then some of the last work he made around 1909, 1910 before he stopped making pottery. Extravagant torqued outside with a stainless steel skin, and that movement and torque nature continues inside to the sheetrock walls as well. We're particularly proud of this gallery and the way it documents Ohr's legacy. It has one of his oldest pieces, the oldest piece we own, and his last pieces. So you see the beginning, the end, and then these pieces in between that are very much signature pieces with dimpling and ruffling and decoration. These are amongst the last works that George Ohr made. He's known both for his flowing forms and his beautiful extravagant glazes, but late in life, increasingly, he made these unglazed works that are paper thin, that have the most movement of any of his pottery, and he incorporates a slip in them, which is a contrasting color of clay. So it's not an applied surface, but the clay is mixed together and thrown as one piece, and then fired to have just a natural clay surface. So these works, some of them incorporate poems and words that he's inscribed on them, but even today the virtuosity of these pieces are unmatched. He was a trickster and a punster. I say that he was Andy Warhol before Andy Warhol existed, because calling himself the Mad Potter of Biloxi meant that he was crazy like a fox, and he knew that his extravagant 18-inch mustache and his eccentric behavior would bring him clients and notoriety. This is the great urn. It's the oldest piece that we own. And it's an interesting piece because you see where George Ohr starts. It's a very traditional Greek-inspired vase form, and it has these applied elements that were made in molds and applied to the form that are very kind of Victorian. They're floral, they're fussy, there are a couple of romantic figures in them. It's very decorative.
Where do you get the pottery?
A lot of the George Ohr pieces we own, and they're part of our permanent collection, but like a lot of museums, we rely on collectors' loans. So we have loans from people all over the country, but there are also some really important collectors and pieces here on the Gulf Coast, and we're going to be featuring some of those collectors when we open the new pod this summer. And Ohr had a tremendous work ethic, and there were thousands of pieces. He did two things. He made everyday objects to support his growing family. He made cups, he made pitchers, stovepipes, necessity along the Gulf Coast, brothel tokens, which is the coinage and the currency used in brothels. And he often inscribed bawdy sayings on them, playing with the whole idea. Sex was a deal for him. He has a whole body of clay that are the vagina pots. So brothel tokens, female genitalia. And since a lot of his clients were tourists, he made what he called puzzle mugs. And that is a mug with a series of holes punched in them so that there's only one correct way to drink from it without spilling the liquid down the front of your shirt. So tourists would come in and he would pull out a puzzle mug and challenge them to drink from it. And usually people left with one. It was a novelty. It was something they could take home and have fun with their friends. So he was a wordsmith, he was a poet, he played 3 musical instruments in the civic band, he was quite a dancer, and he tooled around town on a motorcycle, which for the teens was quite extravagant. The unglazed pottery is now highly sought after years of largely being ignored by a lot of collectors.
And you said the mugs with the holes around $400 or $500. How much would a bisqueware be?
Oh, the bisqueware ranges from a few $1,000s, and a lot of his work that are really prime, extraordinary pieces are well into the tens of thousands of dollars. It wasn't that long ago that people remember when you could buy George Ohr pots for $25 in thrift stores around here. He had a real sense of himself as being visionary and innovative, and he kept his art pottery as a body of work separate. See a whole series of signatures by George Ohr. Artists signing their work at the time they make it, they don't think about becoming part of history, and the way that they sign their work becomes an important way to authenticate it and prove that it's a genuine piece. Because one thing, people are enterprising, so once artwork gains value, it's not atypical to find fakes and forgeries. And that's also true with George Ohr. And today he's in museums and is known as the greatest art potter in the world across America and Europe. The apotheosis of that was when the Museum of Modern Art did their renovation and reopened about 8 years ago. They had never shown crafts or the so-called decorative arts in the same gallery with painting and sculpture. But like a lot of museums, they've started mixing the different media and genres, and they created a gallery that they called the Visionary Gallery. And in this gallery was the Belgian symbolist painter Redon, the French self-taught mailman Rousseau, and the greatest artist of the 20th century, Pablo Picasso. And right beside Picasso, for the first time ever, was a work of craft, pottery by George Ohr.
Thank you for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe.